good evening. You've arrived at a quiet place meant for rest. There is nothing you need to do here, nothing you need to understand, nothing you need to remember. This is not a lesson, it is not a guide. It is simply a calm science narration, spoken slowly and designed to remain in the background while you rest. You don't need to listen closely. You don't need to follow each sentence. If your attention drifts away, that's completely fine. Your body is already doing most of the work on its own. Breathing continues without effort. The weight of your body is supported by the surface beneath you. There is no position you need to hold and nothing to adjust. This time is not meant for improvement. It isn't here to fix anything. It's here to stay steady and predictable, allowing your nervous system to respond in its own natural way. Everything you'll hear tonight is based on well-established scientific understanding, not ideas meant to impress, not theories meant to surprise, just observations that have been measured, described, and repeated over time. They will be shared softly, without urgency, without emphasis. Nothing here is happening quickly, and nothing here requires your attention. If you fall asleep at any point, that's expected. If you remain awake, that's fine too. The narration does not build toward a conclusion. It doesn't depend on sequence. You may notice pauses between phrases. Those pauses are intentional. They are part of the rhythm, giving space without asking for anything in return. As you rest, thoughts may come and go. Some may linger briefly. Others may pass without forming clearly. There is no need to manage them. The voice you're hearing is not here to lead you anywhere. It's simply present, steady, even. From here on, the pace will remain gentle. The tone will not change. There will be no sudden shifts. You're free to listen, and you're just as free not to. The science will continue quietly in the background, slowly, evenly, just as natural processes tend to do when they are left alone. As you continue resting, there's no need to change anything unless your body naturally wants to. If you're already comfortable, stillness can remain just as it is. Breathing is happening on its own. There's no need to slow it down, no need to make it deeper. Each breath arrives and then leaves without effort. You may notice the muscles of your face beginning to soften, around the eyes, along the cheeks, the jaw resting without being held in place. There is nothing to release deliberately, nothing to relax on command. The body does not require instructions in order to move toward rest. Your nervous system responds naturally when the environment is quiet and predictable. It recognizes steadiness. It recognizes the absence of demand. The shoulders may feel supported by gravity, not pulled downward, just held evenly without strain. They don't need to be positioned in any particular way. Your arms are where they are. They don't need symmetry. They don't need to feel heavy or light. They can simply remain present. If there is any tension still there, it does not need to disappear. The body does not require complete relaxation to rest. It only needs enough safety and enough time. The chest rises and falls in its own rhythm. That rhythm may change slightly from moment to moment. This adjustment happens automatically. Lower in the body, the abdomen moves gently with each breath. There's no need to hold it in, no need to control it. It responds naturally to pressure and release. Your back is supported. The surface beneath you is already carrying your weight. There's nothing to balance, nothing to hold upright. The legs remain where they are. They don't need attention. They don't need to feel relaxed or warm or heavy. They can simply be. At the far end of the body, the feet rest without effort. They don't need to be noticed closely. They don't need to change. As these sensations remain steady, the nervous system begins to register the lack of urgency. There is no task to complete, no signal that requires a response. This is often when activity in the body begins to settle on its own, not because it is being directed, but because there is nothing pushing it to stay alert. Thoughts may still appear. They might be fragments from earlier in the day, images, unfinished sentences. They don't need to be pushed away. They don't need to be followed. They can pass through briefly and then move on. If your attention drifts away from these words, that's completely fine. The body does not require continuous input. It responds just as well to consistency and tone. The voice you're hearing is not here to guide you somewhere specific. It remains steady, allowing your internal systems to respond at their own pace. There is nowhere else to be right now, nothing else to prepare for. The night does not require readiness. You can continue resting exactly as you are, breathing, supported, unchanged. The body already understands how to do this. As the body remains supported, attention often becomes less focused on individual sensations. It may feel more spread out, less defined. There doesn't need to be a clear boundary between being awake and resting deeply. Instead, there is usually a gradual shift, one that happens quietly, without announcement. The body is familiar with this kind of transition. It experiences it every night, often without being noticed. Breathing continues. Posture remains unchanged. Nothing new is being asked of you. In moments like this, many processes in the body continue without any need for awareness. Signals travel, adjustments are made, balance is maintained. All of this happens automatically. It doesn't require thought. It doesn't require effort. Scientists use the term nervous system to describe the network that supports these processes, not as a single thing, but as a broad system of communication that is always active. It operates whether or not it is being considered. It does not wait for permission. It does not pause when attention drifts. Most of the time, its activity stays well below awareness. It quietly manages timing. It coordinates movement. It responds to changes in the environment as they occur. This kind of background operation is not unique to the body. In the natural world, many systems work the same way. Temperature shifts gradually through the evening. Light fades without a clear moment when day becomes night. Sound tends to soften as activity decreases. These changes don't require supervision. They unfold because conditions allow them to. The body is shaped by similar patterns. It evolved within environments defined by repetition and slow variation, not constant alertness. Because of that, predictability tends to feel safe. Steady input allows internal systems to reduce unnecessary activity. Nothing has to be solved. As rest deepens, awareness may become less centered on words. Sentences don't need to be followed to the end. Meaning doesn't need to be assembled. The voice continues at an even pace, not to hold attention, but to provide a consistent reference point. This consistency allows the nervous system to remain in a state that does not require vigilance. There's no signal of urgency, no indication that something important is about to happen. At this stage, thinking often becomes less structured, less verbal. Not because it stops, but because it no longer needs to organize itself around decisions. You don't need to notice this shift. You don't need to name it. It can happen quietly, in the background. From here, the science will remain gentle. Simple ideas introduced slowly, nothing complex. The purpose is not understanding, it's steadiness. And as that steadiness continues, the body is free to rest in the way it already knows how to. When scientists talk about the nervous system, they are not describing a single organ or a single location. They are describing a broad network. This network is made up of cells that carry signals that move through the body, quietly, continuously. These signals do not all move at the same speed. Some travel quickly, others move more slowly. But all of them serve the same general purpose. They allow different parts of the body to stay in communication. This communication does not depend on awareness. It does not require attention. Most of it happens without ever entering conscious thought. In simple terms, the nervous system helps the body notice changes. It helps coordinate responses, and it helps maintain balance over time. Scientists often describe this system in two broad parts, not because they are separate, but because it helps with understanding. One part is centered around the brain and the spinal cord. This area is often referred to as the central nervous system. The other part extends outward, into the body, into the limbs, into the organs. This is commonly called the peripheral nervous system. These terms are descriptive. They are not instructions. They simply help map where signals travel. Together, these parts form a continuous system. There are no sharp boundaries, no clear dividing lines. Signals move back and forth constantly. Information flows in both directions, from the body toward the brain, and from the brain outward again. Most of this exchange remains quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not ask to be noticed. The nervous system does not wait for perfect conditions. It operates in the background, adjusting as needed. It responds to light, to sound, to pressure, to temperature. These responses are usually subtle. They happen moment by moment, often without any clear sensation attached. This is why the body can remain steady even as the environment changes. Small adjustments are made continuously, so larger changes are rarely required. The nervous system is not focused on comfort or discomfort alone. Its role is broader than that. It supports coordination, timing, and internal consistency. Because of this, it does not switch on and off. It does not move between active and inactive states. It remains present at all times. What changes is not whether it is working, but how much activity is needed in different areas. In quiet conditions, fewer adjustments are required. Signals become more repetitive. Patterns stabilize. This does not mean the system is doing less. It means it is operating efficiently. The body tends to respond well to this kind of stability, when signals remain predictable, when nothing unexpected needs to be addressed. At this point, there is no need to hold these ideas in mind. They do not need to be remembered. They do not build toward a conclusion. They are simply part of the background, like the steady presence of sound or the even passage of time. From here, the explanation will remain gentle, slow, unhurried. The details are not important. The rhythm is. Much of what happens in the body does not wait for direction. It continues on its own, moment by moment. The heart maintains its rhythm without being told to. Breathing adjusts without planning. Temperature shifts slightly as conditions change. These processes are not reactions in the usual sense. They are ongoing adjustments, quiet and continuous. They do not begin when attention arrives, and they do not stop when attention leaves. This kind of regulation has been present for as long as bodies have existed, long before language, long before deliberate control. It is supported by patterns that repeat over time, signals that travel familiar paths, responses that remain consistent unless conditions truly change. Because of this, the body does not require constant monitoring. It does not need to be checked. It does not need to be managed closely. When the environment remains calm and predictable, fewer adjustments are needed. Signals become more regular. Timing settles into familiar rhythms. This does not happen because something is being done correctly. It happens because there is nothing interrupting the process. The nervous system does not evaluate outcomes. It does not aim for improvement. It simply responds to what is present. If light decreases, signals change. If sound softens, signals change. If the body remains still, signals change. These shifts are small, often too small to notice individually, but together they shape how the body remains balanced over time. Automatic regulation does not depend on effort. It does not depend on belief. It does not depend on intention. It continues whether or not it is being considered. This is why rest does not require perfect conditions. The body does not need complete quiet. It does not need complete stillness. It only needs enough consistency for unnecessary signals to fade. Even now, adjustments are being made. Pressure is redistributed. Muscle tone shifts slightly. Internal timing continues. None of this requires awareness. In daily life, these processes are often overshadowed by activity, by movement, by sound, by decision-making. But when activity decreases, what remains becomes easier to sense, not as specific sensations, but as an overall steadiness. This steadiness does not mean nothing is happening. It means things are happening without interruption. The nervous system remains active, but it is not being asked to respond to anything new. This is often when the body settles into patterns it has used many times before. Patterns that do not require attention. Patterns that do not change quickly. There is no need to follow these descriptions closely. They do not need to be understood in detail. They are meant to remain in the background, like a quiet process unfolding on its own. As the narration continues, nothing here depends on remembering what has been said. Nothing depends on listening carefully. The body does not wait for instruction. It already knows how to continue. When scientists describe the activity of the nervous system, they often use two broad categories, not because the system is divided, but because these categories help describe different patterns of signaling. One pattern is commonly called the sympathetic nervous system. The other is called the parasympathetic nervous system. These are not switches. They are not modes that turn on or off. They are overlapping patterns that are always present to some degree. The sympathetic pattern is associated with readiness, with alertness, with the ability to respond when something changes. It supports movement, orientation, and the coordination needed when attention is required. This pattern does not appear only during stress. It is active throughout the day, and it plays an essential role in ordinary functioning. The parasympathetic pattern is associated with maintenance, with digestion, with recovery processes that unfold over time. It supports activities that do not require quick reactions, processes that benefit from steadiness rather than speed. These two patterns are not in competition. They are not opposing forces. They work together, continuously adjusting relative influence. At any given moment, both are present. What shifts is the balance between them. When the environment is unpredictable, signaling related to readiness becomes more prominent. When conditions remain stable, signaling related to maintenance becomes easier to observe. This does not mean one pattern is better than the other. Both are necessary. Both are active parts of the same system. The nervous system does not label experiences as calm or active. It responds to input, and it adjusts signaling based on what is present. Light levels, sound, movement, posture. All of these influence signaling patterns automatically. There is no need to guide this process. There is no need to optimize it. The system does not wait for instruction. Over time, repeated conditions tend to produce repeated patterns. When signals remain similar, the system responds in familiar ways. This is not learning in the deliberate sense. It is continuity. Scientists use these categories to describe trends across many observations. They are not meant to be felt directly. They are not meant to be controlled. In daily life, most shifts between these patterns go unnoticed. They happen quietly, gradually. The nervous system does not move abruptly from one state to another. Transitions tend to be smooth, incremental. This gradual change is important. It allows the body to remain stable even as conditions evolve. As activity decreases and external demands fade, the need for rapid adjustment also fades. Signals associated with readiness become less dominant. Signals associated with ongoing maintenance remain. This is not something that needs to be encouraged. It is simply what tends to happen when there is no demand for action. There is no correct balance to reach, no target state. The nervous system adjusts continuously, moment by moment, based on what is present. At this stage, there is no need to hold these distinctions clearly in mind. They are descriptive tools, not instructions. The words themselves do not need to be followed closely. They can remain as sound. As the narration continues, these ideas will not be expanded further. They do not lead toward a conclusion. They are part of the background understanding. Quiet, unobtrusive. The system continues doing what it has always done, adjusting, maintaining. And with no new demands arriving, those adjustments can remain small, steady, unremarkable. Within the broader network of the nervous system, there are many individual pathways. Most of them are never noticed. They do their work quietly, without drawing attention. One of these pathways is known as the vagus nerve. It is a long nerve that connects the brain with several internal organs. It carries signals in both directions, from the body toward the brain, and from the brain outward again. Scientists describe it as part of the system that supports ongoing regulation. It is not separate. It does not operate on its own. Like other nerves, it does not act with intention. It does not decide outcomes. It simply carries information. Much of this signaling happens slowly. It unfolds over time, and it remains well below conscious awareness. The vagus nerve is not something that needs to be felt. It is not something that needs to be adjusted. It functions whether or not it is being considered. In everyday conditions, Its activity blends into the background. It contributes to the steady exchange of information that allows internal processes to remain coordinated. This contribution is constant. It does not increase suddenly. It does not switch on or off. When scientists study this pathway, they do so by observing patterns across many individuals. They look at how signals tend to behave over time, not at momentary changes. These observations help describe how the nervous system maintains continuity. They do not suggest techniques. They do not imply control. It is easy to focus on individual components when they are named, but the nervous system does not operate in isolated parts. Every signal travels within a larger context. Multiple pathways interact at the same time. No single nerve directs the whole. Because of this, the body does not require attention to specific structures. It does not need focus on individual pathways. Its processes remain integrated. At this point, there is no need to remember the name of this nerve. It does not need to be held in mind. It is simply one small part of a system that has already been working continuously. Before this moment, and after it. As the narration continues, attention does not need to remain on structure or terminology. Those details can fade. What remains is the sense of ongoing communication. Quiet, distributed, uninterrupted. The nervous system continues to do what it does best, maintaining balance, without asking for awareness. As the narration continues, there is less need for words to carry meaning. They can remain as sound, moving at a steady pace. Without forming clear ideas, the nervous system continues its activity in the same quiet way. Signals travel along familiar paths. Adjustments are made without notice. Nothing new is required. The body remains supported. Breathing continues on its own. There is no change in posture that needs attention. The same patterns repeat, not because they are important, but because repetition is stable. The nervous system responds well to consistency. When signals do not change, there is no need for heightened awareness. Nothing stands out. Communication continues in the background, between the body and the brain, between different regions, evenly. There is no single point to focus on, no specific sensation that needs to be tracked. The system does not look for meaning. It responds to presence, to rhythm, to predictability. Words may begin to blur together. Pauses may feel longer. Time may feel less defined. This does not need to be noticed closely. It can happen without awareness. The same descriptions return gently, not to explain, but to remain steady. Signals continue. Adjustments continue. Balance is maintained. The body does not require instruction now. It already understands how to remain still. It already understands how to rest. The environment remains quiet and unchanged. There is no signal of urgency, no indication that something new is about to happen. The voice remains even. Its role does not shift. It does not move toward emphasis or conclusion. If attention drifts away from the words, that is expected. The nervous system does not rely on constant input. It responds just as well to tone and rhythm. Thoughts may still appear. They do not need to be followed. They do not need to be completed. They can pass in the same way sounds pass through a quiet room, present for a moment, then gone. Nothing here depends on remembering what has already been said. Nothing depends on staying awake. The same patterns remain, familiar, predictable. This repetition is intentional. It creates a steady background, one that does not require monitoring. As the minutes pass, the narration does not change direction. It does not introduce new ideas. It does not increase in pace. Everything continues at the same level, the same rhythm, the same tone. There is nothing to anticipate, nothing to prepare for. The nervous system continues doing what it has always done, quietly maintaining balance, without effort, without instruction. By now, there is no need to keep track of what has already been said. Nothing here depends on remembering details. Nothing is building toward a conclusion. The nervous system continues its activity in the same way it always has. Signals travel, adjustments occur, balance is maintained. These processes do not speed up, they do not slow down suddenly. They are not affected by attention. The repetition you hear is intentional. Repetition reduces the need for monitoring. When nothing changes, the brain no longer needs to stay alert. This is often the point where listening becomes optional. Words may still be heard, but they no longer need to be interpreted. Sentences can pass without forming clear meaning. Sounds can remain as sound. The body remains supported. Breathing continues at its own pace. Nothing has shifted. The environment is unchanged. There is no signal that something new is about to happen. No indication that attention is required. From this point on, there is no advantage in staying awake. The narration does not become more complex. It does not introduce new information. Everything continues as it has been. If sleep arrives now, nothing is missed. The processes being described do not move toward an ending. They repeat. They continue. If awareness fades, it fades naturally. If it returns briefly later, it can drift again just as easily. There is no correct way to experience this moment. Some nights, rest arrives quickly. Other nights, it arrives in stages. Both are normal. The body does not need instruction. The nervous system does not need reassurance. The steady rhythm is enough. The voice remains consistent. Its tone does not change. It does not ask to be followed. From here on, the information density remains low. No new ideas will be introduced. No new explanations will appear. The narration will not move forward in the way stories usually do. It will simply stay. The same patterns will return, quietly, predictably. There is nothing to prepare for, nothing to anticipate. The night does not require participation. It allows rest. You do not need to follow this any further. The permission has already been given. The rhythm continues. Nothing shifts. Nothing resolves. The nervous system remains active in the same quiet way. Signals continue to travel along familiar paths. Adjustments continue without notice. There is no change in direction, no increase in pace, no new information arriving. The body remains supported. Breathing continues on its own. Posture stays as it is. The environment does not ask for attention. Sound remains steady. Silence appears between phrases. These pauses are part of the rhythm. They do not signal change. They allow space. Words no longer need to connect to one another. They can arrive, then fade. Sentences do not need to be completed. Thoughts do not need to be formed. The nervous system does not require interpretation. It responds to consistency, to repetition, to tone. The same descriptions return softly, not to explain, not to guide, only to remain present. There is no task, no response required. If awareness drifts away, that is expected. If it returns briefly, it can drift again just as easily. Nothing here depends on attention. The processes being described do not change when they are not observed. They do not slow down, they do not speed up. They continue at the same pace they always have. Time may feel less structured. Moments do not need to be counted. There is no sequence to follow. The voice remains even. It does not move toward an ending. It does not signal completion. Meaning begins to soften. Words lose their edges. What remains is sound and rhythm. The nervous system continues its steady work, maintaining balance, without effort. There is no advantage in staying awake for what comes next. Nothing new is waiting. The same patterns remain, familiar, predictable. They provide a stable background, one that does not need to be monitored. The night continues quietly, without interruption, and within that quiet, there is room for rest to settle, without effort, without needing to be noticed. The rhythm remains. Nothing changes. The same steady patterns continue in the background. The nervous system carries on, quietly, without pause. Words arrive more slowly now. They do not carry new information. They do not need to connect. Sound is enough. Pauses stretch gently between phrases. Those spaces do not ask to be filled. They are part of what remains. Breathing continues on its own. There is no need to notice it. The body stays supported. Nothing needs to be adjusted. The environment is unchanged. No signal appears. No direction is given. Sentences may feel unfinished. That is intentional. They do not need completion. Meaning softens. Edges fade. The nervous system does not depend on language. It does not depend on understanding. It responds to steadiness. Repetition continues, not to reinforce ideas, but to maintain rhythm. The same phrases return in slightly different forms, familiar, predictable. Nothing important is happening, and nothing needs to happen. If awareness has already faded, the narration continues without needing to be heard. If awareness lingers, it does not need to follow. There is no advantage in staying with the words. They are no longer carrying anything that needs to be held. Time does not need to be tracked. Moments do not need labels. The voice remains present, even, unchanged. It does not move toward an ending. It does not prepare for silence. It simply continues at the same pace. The nervous system remains steady. Signals continue to move. Adjustments continue quietly. Nothing here depends on attention. The night does not progress toward a conclusion. It unfolds. And within that unfolding, there is nothing to resolve. The rhythm continues. Nothing shifts. Nothing completes. The same steady patterns remain in place. Quiet, unchanged. Words arrive, then soften. They do not need to stay. They do not need to form anything. Pauses linger. They are part of the sound. Breathing continues without notice. The body remains supported. There is nothing to hold, nothing to correct. If awareness is present, it does not need to focus. If it fades naturally. The nervous system continues its quiet work. Signals move along familiar paths. Adjustments remain small. There is no signal marking time, no boundary between moments. The voice remains even. It does not ask to be followed. It does not lead anywhere. Sentences do not need to finish. Thoughts do not need to form. Sound is enough. Silence is enough. Nothing here depends on attention. Nothing depends on memory. The same steadiness remains. Predictable, undemanding. The night continues in its own way, without instruction, without direction, and the quiet remains.